Our project and blog post examines the tourist gaze and how tourists and non-tourists see one another in various parts of the world. To start off, we are going to define keywords.
Visual culture is the field of study that generally comprises of the combination of cultural studies, art history, critical theory, philosophy, and anthropology by focusing on aspects of culture that rely on visual images. Visual culture can be everywhere, yet nowhere at once. In a world full of overwhelming visual images depicted through various screens, images, and objects, all demanding our attention, it is hard not to see visual culture in everything. On the contrary, images portrayed in the media come out as a form of mixed media, all eventually becoming copies with no original due to the constant reproduction of the visual. This unending line of replication forces us to accept the fakes as the real and gives the idea of new always being better.
The concept of gaze is one that deals with how an audience views the people presented. For example, with feminists, it can be thought of how men look at women, how women look at themselves, and how women look at other women. According to Mirzoff, the male gaze is structured around voyeurism, a looking in which the looked at was unaware of being under surveillance. The watcher here knew that the watched was not only aware of being watched, but had enabled it. In short, the gaze is the awareness that one can be viewed, and any given object, such as a couch, can similarly produce the gaze effect.
The tourist gaze is a structured looking practice instead of looking relationship. This gaze is reinforced by professionals and institutions who gain authority by practicing the gaze. At the same time, every day, people, tourists and non-tourists, participate in the tourist gaze. However, not everyone can occupy the tourist gaze equally. On the surface, the tourist appears to be the one looking. However, the non-tourist is watching the tourist. Therefore, the tourist is watching whatever is around him and is being watched by the non-tourist. Tourism then becomes an eyewitness observation and travel is visualized. Therefore, tourists and non-tourists alike are constantly assessing a scene in its varied details and layers. It is a form of knowledge and production steeped in power relations. However, the tourist gaze varies in different instances. Its key feature, it defines itself as a distinct form, the non-tourist gaze. Therefore, the tourist gaze is a structured set of looking relationships.
We begin our journey by saying aloha. As we fly into the beautiful and tropical islands of Hawaii, you can't help but get into the Hawaiian vibe that surrounds you. The humid air and the sweet scent of the hibiscuses and the plumerias engulf you as you step off the plane. This island, once full of Hawaiian culture, is now a hot tourist spot all year long. Visitors can get into the once thriving Hawaiian culture by going to luau's, taking surfing lessons, and visit ancient ruins throughout the different islands. The Hawaiian Islands were once full of tribes and culture, but now the islands are mostly stereotypes of the culture that used to be here. Visitors like to come and pretend to be part of this culture, when in reality it is mostly a show. Since Hawaii has become a state, the United States has worked to reform Hawaii, taking it away from its natural culture. The Hawaiian people are victims of colonial fantasy, which according to Homi Bhabha is the continual dramatization of emergence, of difference, freedom, as the beginning of a history which is repetitively denied. Such a denial is clearly voiced, demanded of colonial discourse as the legitimization of a form of rule that is facilitated by the racist fetish. Mahalo, and thank you for flying Hawaiian Airlines.
You are now free to move about the country. 150 years after the height of the plantation South, the presumed romance of the era still seems to hold sway in the American national imaginary. Tourism at plantation sites like these has surged in recent years. However, most of you who are visiting with us today are surveying these plantations through a whitewashed lens and viewing the South in its splendor. For educational purposes, we'll be viewing these architectural spectacles and period furnishings through a whitewashed lens. But unfortunately, the gaze of the slave is no longer present at the plantation. As you view these beautiful, powerfully positioned plantation mansions in lush splendor, you can't help but notice that all the traces of slavery have been erased from the properties. You're immediately swept away into a fantasy, creating a powerful, imagined, romanticized scene of the history of the rich, white, privileged people of the South. As this fantasy unfolds, a gentler past is created, right in front of your eyes, and it isn't disturbed by the ghostly presence of the slaves. This tour ultimately is frozen in today's modern world and only shows one perspective of the South.
As we pass over what people may call the cosmopolitan center of the world, keep your eye out for our very own Lady of Liberty. Whether you are embarking on your first journey to New York as a tourist or returning to New York as a resident, visiting the Statue of Liberty is always an enjoyable option. The Statue of Liberty stands as a symbol of United States decolonization and a gift from France commemorating its establishment as a unified nation. The Statue of Liberty is meant to represent the Roman goddess of freedom, Libertas, and she is shown holding a torch and tablet, along with the broken chain on her leg. The Statue of Liberty is meant to be seen as a symbol of freedom and of the United States, acting as a welcome sign to the immigrants. The Statue of Liberty is meant to be seen, and though it has no function, it attracts the gaze of many. Our Lady of Liberty is a spectacle which becomes objectified and dissected by the gaze of others subconsciously. The statue always appears to be looking back at you, and from its crowned brim, people are given the unique experience of seeing from her perspective. Laura Mulvey, a feminist film critic, explains the theory of the mirror phase and how cinema uses the mirror concept to explain cinema's technique of creating a connection/mirror between the audience and the main characters of a film, causing the audience to try and relate and perceive themselves as the character in this fantasy world. Those who immigrated to the United States from overseas are meant to identify with the statue's symbol of freedom and in turn see themselves as free as well.
Please fasten your seatbelts and enjoy your flight to Paris. Bon voyage!
Coming up to our right, you can see the beautifully crafted Eiffel Tower standing 1,360 feet tall in the Champ de Mars. The Eiffel Tower stands as the universal symbol of Paris, and there is almost no escaping its gaze. The tower not only functions as an object of great visual elegance, but also grants individuals the unique ability to use it as a method of seeing Paris from great height. From the top of the Eiffel Tower, Paris is depicted panoramically, turning the large hectic city into a serene form of nature. This transformation of Paris into a type of naturistic vantage point, which is unique in comparison to other monuments. Roland Barthes describes this as, "The tower is not a trace, a souvenir, in short a culture, but rather an immediate consumption of a humanity made natural by the glance which transforms it into space." While most monuments achieve its meaning through the destruction of nature, the Eiffel Tower, to the contrary, gives its spectators the illusion of humanity becoming its own nature. Because of its sheer mass, the Eiffel Tower is an unavoidable sight in Paris, and in conjunction with its placement directly centering Paris, the tower makes for a powerful visual image, forcing our gaze to be on the tower regardless of our placement. Be forewarned, even if you do not wish to visit the Eiffel Tower, there is no escaping its massive gaze. As Roland Barthes, a Paris native, puts it, "The tower is there, incorporated into daily life until you can no longer grant it any specific attribute, determined merely to persist like a rock or the river. There is virtually no Parisian glance that fails to touch at the time of day."